Hello, I hope you've had a great day celebrating Resurrection Day, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We did so at our church this morning, and we were asked if anyone had any stories of the past about things or people coming from death to resurrection. So people told their stories, and this is the story that I told. It's a story from 30 years ago, and it was concerning this young girl in her late teens into her early 20s. Her name was Sandra Haxton, and I had the privilege of mentoring and discipling that young girl for 2 or 3 years. She had cystic fibrosis, and sometimes she would have to have, that machine at her side, and she'd be in and out of the hospital like a yo-yo. But I just kept believing that God was going to touch her and heal her. I used to be able to, the hospital staff would phone me and ask me to come in because she could not settle in her room, because she kept seeing these demons flying around. And the only time she seemed to have peace when there was people, the likes of myself, in there praying with Sandra and for Sandra. Her mum would send for me also. And about 4 times, Sandra nearly died. She was in her last few minutes, but God resurrected her once again. One time when I was visiting, she was physically sick, and I'm no use with sickness. So I exited the room, and the nurses and doctors rushed in to attend to her. When one of the nurses came out, I said, "Look, I'll just go now because you're really busy with Sandra." And they said, "Oh no, please wait, just please wait." So I went back in and I stayed a while and I prayed, but I didn't know then that the reason that the nurses and doctors wanted me to go in there was because they knew she was dying. They knew she was in her last few minutes of life, and they asked me to go in, but I didn't know this. So I went in and I prayed, and then I left the place, and she recovered. She came to life once again. She was at death's door again, and God resurrected her. She recovered one more time. One day, some months later, the nursing sister called me to say that Sandra was very ill and about to die. And her mum, Margaret Ann Haxton, wanted me to come in and say goodbye. And I thought, oh no, I'm believing for this young girl's healing. So what I did then, I called my son-in-law, Gordon Sharp, and Aileen, my pastor's wife, and Linda, a young lady that I had been discipling for the last year or two. And the 4 of us went in, and the sister allowed us in, and we just prayed round her bed. We prayed, we laid hands on her, and instead of saying goodbye, we spoke life into that which was dead. Life into that which was dead. Well, suddenly, all her organs and her body started to jump into life again. You know, when they're plugged into machines and the heart machine and the heart, you see it jumping again. Well, all the organs in her body started to work again. So as this was going on, eventually Sandra came back and she asked, "What are you doing here?" She thought we were with her in some heavenly realm at that moment in time. Just then, the nursing sister came in, and she was horrified that we had brought her back and she was actually talking. She was freaking out, actually. And she actually showed us the door, dismissed us from the room and even the ward. Incidentally, that nursing sister came and became a Christian, And it was really through all the supernatural works that she had seen working in Sandra. She had seen the unbelievable power of God working in this young girl's life. So when she came back and she was able to talk, every day she would unplug herself from all these machines and stand up on her bed supernaturally, because she was just a wee slight girl. She had no energy, no strength, and God had her stand on top of her bed, and she praised Jesus and thanked Jesus for her healing, and just praised and worshipped the Lord God Almighty. So when the nurses came back in, they sat her back down and plugged her all in again, But every day she did that for 3 weeks, 3 whole weeks, every single day. And her mum was there, her family were there. The nurses came from all around the hospital to see this supernatural girl, Sandra. The doctors came from round about to see this supernatural girl, Sandra, who stood there praising the Lord and thanking God for healing her. People were not understanding. They knew it was supernatural. They were freaking out because they knew this young girl had no energy to lift herself up in that bed. She was a sign and a wonder for 3 weeks. And I'm sure people, nurses, if they're even listening to this, people that were there and they saw this, they will remember this all these years ago, how God kept resurrecting her into life itself. But one day, her mum, Margaret, phoned me and she said, Betty, Sandra wants to go to be with Jesus all the time. She talks to him every day. And she said, even if she was 110% well and healthy to live a life here, she does not want to come back to this earth. She wants to be with Jesus the whole time. That was hard for me because I believed that she'd be healed here. But God had used her in so many ways and demonstrated his resurrection life through her. And later, I was to come to understand that when a person spends time like that with Jesus, talking to him every day, they don't want to come back to this earth. They don't want to come back to this earth. So the dunamis resurrection, you see, resurrection power is like dynamite. It's dunamis in Greek, and that's dynamite. And the dunamis dynamite resurrection power was displayed through Sandra's life in these last weeks. And the glory of the Lord filled her. She chose to go and be with Jesus rather than be here in this earth. And there was other ones too that we remember. St. Columba, he wanted to go home. He had done his job here, he felt, and he wanted to go home to be with the Lord. And he saw the angels coming to get him. Suddenly they stopped, and his face fell. And his disciple, Dermot, said to him, "Why did you look so sad?" I said, "Because the angels are coming to me and God stopped them, and he told me I have to be here for another 4 years to minister to the people." So the 4 years was up, and it was actually during Easter was the 4 years was up. And God had given him now the invitation that it was now time. He had served well here. It was now time that he would go home to be with the Lord. However, Columba, because it was the Easter festival time, Columba chose not to go until the festival was over, because his monks and all the people would be very sad. So he chose when he would go. He chose the day that he would go. St. Patrick as well, he knew when he was going away. He knew exactly where he was to go, when he would be taken up to heaven. He knew when he was to go, when he would depart this scene. He knew exactly the time and the place. You see, these people all lived so close to the Lord. And latterly, Sandra lived so close to Jesus that when she received the invitation to be with Jesus all time, forevermore, she chose the better way. Thank you.